Hey, Tanisha, this is Anthony.
Hello, Anthony. Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you okay. Can you hear me?
Right. I can. Great to
I
meet
did this
you.
right.
I know. I was sitting here, and you know what? I actually just emailed Josh. So let me come back and say never mind, because I was having a little bit of a panic attack thinking that I didn't have it. Man. How was your morning going?
Oh, it's been a hectic morning. Jeez. Just trying to catch up from yesterday, but everything is okay. So that's all we can ask for.
You're sure right about that. I hope all is well. I'm very glad that you're joining us this morning. And thank you for your slide. So if there's any technical issues, which I hope there's not.
Yeah, so I'm assuming that all I do is click this little computer button to share when it's time for me to share.
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Hey.
Hey, Ryan. How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
Doing well. Good to see you. We have two of you guys on. Great. So Anthony, this is Dr. Ryan.
Hello, Ryan. How are you?
Hey, Anthony. Doing well. How are you?
I am good. Thank you.
Hey,
Tanisha,
Arthur.
I've never shared my screen on here.
Everyone.
Good morning. I think Anthony and I were just talking about it, actually. I believe it is the little computer with that slash through it.
Okay.
So I believe you'll click that
Cool.
once you're ready to go.
Great.
Arthur, nice to meet you. Nice to see you.
Nice to meet you all virtually. Well, bringing warm regards from Canada. Thank you for the opportunity to partake.
Absolutely. Love to have you. And quick fun fact, I was looking over some profiles and bios, and you know, the thing about degrees of separation is so true. Do you know that the both of you, Ryan and Arthur, are from Ontario?
Yeah. I grew up in Mississauga, just outside of Toronto. Okay. I actually go to Windsor a lot because there's a lot of Canadian food I like, and I like the closest place to get to from Cincinnati.
Yeah, it's a great place, and for us, being right next to Detroit, we're almost a lot more culture-wise American than we are Canadian. They always say, like, Canada ends in London. So there's a lot of connection there, I think.
Here's another fun fact for you. Another fun fact. I was actually married in Banff, Alberta, in Canada.
Oh, nice.
Oh, that's the most beautiful place on earth.
Really?
Beautiful spot.
Okay.
Really
See,
nice.
I was just gonna say that's a better one, Anthony. I was just gonna say that you and I are both wildcats. That's all I was gonna say. That's all I was gonna say there. Okay.
I'll take that too.
Good morning, Dr. Portia. How are you? Welcome.
Good. Trying to cover up this paper on my wall. There we go.
No, keep it up there, Dr. Portia. It makes you look like you got stuff going on.
So listen, I believe we are ready to go. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I think there are some people who have joined us. So good morning, and thank you all for joining us for day 2 of the We Mean Business Conference. My name is Tanisha D'Amberville-Pierre, Program Manager for National Programs at Interrise, and I'm honored to be hosting and facilitating this morning's session on maintaining relevance during a crisis and identifying marketing opportunities. Well, I'd like to welcome and introduce our speakers for this session. We have an amazing group of folks lined up for you all this morning, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from them as they bring a great deal of depth and knowledge in this topic area that we have for you all this morning. So for the folks watching, if you can do me a favor and in the chat, we're online, we're virtual, we can't see you, we can't hear you. So if you can just drop a hello, a howdy, how you doing, so that we can know that you're with us, and that's your form of welcoming our speakers for today, that would be great. I do want to go ahead and just introduce them. Please welcome Dr. Ryan Rahanel, Executive Director of Progress Ally. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Dr. Portia Jackson, Business Development Manager for the City of Houston Office of Business Opportunity. Dr. PJ, good to see you this morning. And then we have Arthur Barbett, CEO of the Downtown Windsor Business Accelerator out of Windsor, Ontario, Canada. Come on, international, welcome. So glad to have you. And Anthony Mcintosh, President and Founder of SSC Advisors, LLC. So I know we did a little bit of chatting, but how are you all feeling this morning? What's on your minds? Are you ready and geared up for this session?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Can I just add a doctor to my name as well, so I can feel like Dr.
Just go
Portia and
ahead
Dr. Ryan?
You gotta speak it. Throw it out there. Throw it out
Portia
there.
got the cool nickname. She's got PJ.
I know,
Okay.
Dr.
We have it.
PJ.
So good morning to the folks in the chat. Thank you so much for adding in your hellos. I really appreciate that. Let's try to get some engagement going on in here. For those of you who don't know, maybe this is your first day to the conference, the intention for this conference is to aid you, business owners, in rethinking the way you do business so that you can compete in this uncertain business ecosystem. Listen, we've all been hit one way or another by this pandemic, not just that of COVID-19, but also of the racial injustices and inequities that are plaguing and have plagued for generations the systems that we live by. So today, our goal is to have you all walk away with gems that you can put into practice right now. Things to think about, solutions to put into practice to navigate your future. We're structuring this session a little bit differently. It's a morning, so bear with us. It'll be great though. Here's what you can expect. We'll have a fast and furious succession of shortened, solution-based presentations by these speakers that you see here today. They're gonna drop knowledge and then they're gonna drop the mic. And then someone's gonna pick it up. It's gonna be a relay race. So after that, we'll have a brief Q&A. Please feel free to drop your questions in the chat as we're kind of going through the session. We're gonna pull from those during the Q&A. And I'll be monitoring that, and also our tech support will be monitoring that. So please get your notepads out, your iPhones, your tablets, and get ready to take notes because you're in for a ride. What we're gonna do is we're gonna start off with Dr. Ryan. He's gonna go ahead and share his screen and take us through our first presentation. Dr. Ryan, take it away.
Okay. Oh. I'm just gonna share my screen here. Doesn't look like it's gonna let me share it.
Okay, give me a second here.
Tanisha, you've got my talk, right?
I do. And I can go ahead and share.
Yeah, it's weird. My talk isn't coming up on the number of screens I can share. I can also go through it without slides. It might not be too hard.
Okay. Yep, I'm trying to share it as well. And I'm getting some issues on my end.
Yeah.
So our apologies, folks. Technology, it's making us better, but it's also slowing us down sometimes.
All right. Well, let me go through it without slides. I can really slow down and hopefully kind of walk through it a little bit more slowly, just so everybody kind of gets it. But thanks everybody for having me. Like Tanisha mentioned, my name is Ryan Rahnel. I'm an associate professor of marketing as well at University of Cincinnati. So what I really want to talk about is how your product fits into categories and how segments of consumers interact with those categories of products. This is a framework that was developed in 2009 around the last Great Recession. And so, as you all know, we're likely to hit a recession here after this pandemic. And during those times, products really take on new meanings, right? And so you might think of them as belonging to one of four different categories, right? The first are essentials, right? Those are things that are central and critical to either your survival or your well-being. That might be Like in the domain of food, you might think of like cereal, milk, eggs, flour, and so forth, right? The next category are treats. Those are things that aren't critical, but they're pretty justifiable, right? So you might think, if we're thinking about food again, maybe potato chips, Jell-O, that kind of stuff. The third category is postponables. Okay, these are products that are either needed or wanted, but you can postpone them without severe adverse consequences. I think a really good example here are vitamins, right? So they're really good for you, but you can do without them. They're also kind of expensive, so a lot of people will choose to postpone them during rough times. The fourth category are what we know as expendables. Okay, those are things that most people under typical circumstances can really put away. Again, in the domain of food, you might think of expensive products like caviar and saffron here, right? So what's important to note is that there are 4 different segments of consumers that emerge during recessions, right? And they interact differently with these 4 categories of products, right? So the first segment is known as the slam on the brakes segment, okay? These are segments of consumers who either were pretty low income before the recession and the recession's affecting them, or they may have lost their job. They're really adversely affected by the recession. So these people, with respect to essentials, will still buy them, obviously. They're really necessary, but they will seek lower cost substitutes. They'll also brand switch, right? So for these people, this is when private labels really thrive, right? Because they are the cheaper option. For treats, they deeply reduce them or eliminate them, and then they don't buy any postponables or expendables, okay? Then you have the pain but patient segment is what they're called. And these are other individuals who are also affected by the recession, but they're weathering a little bit better, okay? These individuals still look at their favorite brands for the essentials, but they seek lower prices and will switch to different brands if there are better price substitutes there. They cut back on treats. And for postponables, they really focus on value. And they won't really buy them if there isn't a good value there. For them, expendables are just what they are. They're expendables. So they really don't buy them at all. The third segment are what we know as the comfortably well-off segment, okay? These people continue to buy their favorite brands for essentials. They don't change any of their behavior for essentials. For the treats, they're more selective, and they focus on really reducing the frequency with which they buy treats. For postponables, just like the pain by patient segment, they seek out better value, okay? So they're really looking at higher quality for the same price point. For expendables, they don't really regard a lot of things as less justifiable, but they will reduce their more conspicuous consumption. So things that are status oriented, things that like handbags, fashion shoes and so forth, okay? Now the last segment is known as the live for today segment. And this segment will continue to buy the treats and essentials at pre-recession levels. No changes, including price sensitivity. They might even buy postponables. If there's a particularly good deal, they'll justify to themselves, like, yeah, this is something I should get now. And for expendables, there aren't really many things that they regard as very expendable. They don't really believe in adjusting their consumption according to financial constraints or economic constraints. Okay. So people often ask me, okay, like, you have all these like conceptual things flying around. How do we know that this stuff happens? How do we know where my business fits in? Okay, the important thing here is market research. It is your first tool. It is your best tool, okay? So through market research, you can find out what type of product do I have and what segment do my consumers fall into. The other thing that's important to note is that these categories are idiosyncratic. What that means is that even within the same segment of consumers, they can view the same product as in 2 different categories. They're also dynamic, which means that over the course of, let's say, a recession, something might change from, let's say, a treat to a postponable or postponable to treat and so forth. So that means that you have to do market research at different points during this session to uncover where your product and your segment really lie, okay? Now let me talk to you about the power of this framework, okay? Once you understand which segment you have and where your category fits in terms of products, you can use it to uncover strategy that can help you, okay? I'm gonna discuss 3 different strategies here, okay? The first one is to battle within your position. If you know where your target segment is and how they look at those different product categories, you can tailor your product category to fit what they're looking for. So let's take an example. Let's say winter coats in Canada. All right, we've got 2 Canadians here, right? So if we know that, let's say we are an essential for slam on the brakes people, low income people, let's say Northern Canada, right? One thing you can do is engage in price promotion. You can divert resources from, let's say, R&D to price promotions. So you can do price cuts, you can do sales, and so forth. Now, one issue with that is that for some companies, they're already low margin, right? And so in that case, you might want to do something like a line extension, right? So introduce a new line of products that are actually lower quality, but are lower price. And people who are slamming the brakes, they're okay with that because they're just looking for the lowest price. For other companies, that might be unfeasible because they're, let's say luxury brands, or they're brands that are seen as premium. So you don't want to dilute your brand image. So what you can do here is sub-brand, right? So let's say we're North Face, right? Typically seen as kind of a premium brand. You can create another brand underneath it, let's say called Core, right? This is a common strategy when you want to vertically stretch. Marriott is a company that's done this. Everybody's seen Courtyard by Marriott. That is a brand that's designed to go down, but still have the reputation of Marriott behind it. Okay, so these are all things that you can do. Let's say if you're an essential product category with slam on the brakes consumers. Okay? The final thing I would say with this example is that it's really, really, really important to monitor your private label brand, okay? Private labels thrive in recessions. What they do, and they're really smart about it, most companies that are not private label, they engage in what we call counter-cyclical spending, which means that when economy is doing bad, they spend less, right? When economy is doing good, they spend more. Private labels are the opposite. They spend more when there's recessions because they know that they're price leaders and they can capitalize on that. The problem with that is that after recessions end, people just stay with the private label. That's why private labels grow during recessions, okay? All right, let's look at one more example. Let's say that we want to refocus our product category, right? So let's say we're a postponable and we want to refocus it to gain quantity demanded by refocusing it as either a treat or essential. So a common postponable is dental work. During recessions, people postpone medical procedures that are elective, right? So if you want to change that to an essential, you could really challenge the health risk of postponing that work. You could say, hey, like this could be something really bad if you let this stay. But the other thing you could do is challenge the financial risk of doing that. So, hey, that tooth's getting really bad. If you wait, it's going to cost you way more later on. At that point, that dental work turns into an essential, right? You could also postpone it as a treat, right? You can refocus it. So you can say, you might not need it now, but right now you should really focus on your well-being, right? Use that dental work, make you more comfortable. It's a hard time. So this is something you really deserve for yourself, okay? So the third strategy is something you can do is retarget, right? And this is a really good strategy when 2 segments have really similar needs. So if you think about the comfortably well-off people and the pain but patient people for, let's say, postponables or treats, right? Let's say winter jackets again, but for these segments. These people both focus on value, right? So what you can do is instead of shifting from lower cost value for the pain but patient people, you kind of pivot to higher quality value, right? So You say, hey, this is not only low price, but this is super high quality. And that will engage some of the comfortably well-off people to your products, right? Now, in these cases, it's really important. Don't forget about your home segment. Your home segment is what allows you to do this at lower cost because these people will buy with lower advertising rates, right? So that's a really huge source of revenue at lower cost, okay? So just to sum up, the 3 steps are uncover your segment. What segment of consumers are you targeting? Uncover your product category. Where in the 4 types of product categories do you see your product fitting in? Do those through market research. Once you have those, you uncover your strategy. And that depends on your brand. That depends on your competition, like lateral competition, like private label growth, and so forth. All right, and that's all I have. Thanks, Tanisha.
Thank you, Ryan. I wish we could do some applause. We're going to do some applause for Ryan. Thank you so much. We're going to have Dr. PJ pick it right up.
All right. Is my screen visible?
Not yet. Are you getting the share?
Not yet. Yes, I got the share cue.
Okay.
Maybe it'll come up soon. So good morning, everyone. I am Dr. Portia Jackson. I manage the business programs in the city of Houston. So I bring you greetings all the way from Houston, Texas, and I'm glad to be here. So thank you to Ms. Deborah Davis and the entire team for giving me this opportunity to be able to share information with you. I wanted to start off with a quote by Napoleon Hill, and that is, opportunity often comes disguised in the form of misfortune or temporary defeat. So during this unfortunate time, I want to ensure you that there is opportunity. And today I wanted to talk about opportunity that you have. And to do that, I wanted to focus on the 3 R's: relevance, relationships, and repurpose. Relevance, relationships, and repurpose. So with relevance, we're looking at the question, how do we remain relevant? Organizations are able to remain relevant by 3 things: your online content, your social media presence, and your current demand. And so what we mean by online content is that because we are in a virtual world, we're slowly getting back into face-to-face interaction, but we're never going to have it like we had before. So you want to make sure that you are telling rich stories with your online content on your website. So think about this. If you're in retail, people cannot try on your clothes. They can't feel the materials. So how can you make sure that you give them that shopping experience by visiting your website? So I've been seeing a lot of companies, what they're doing is they're having videos of the actual garments, and they're doing close-up shots on it, and they're showing you how it feels and how you can wear it. So it's like a mini fashion show per se. And also you want to concentrate. You have about 14 to 30 seconds to really capture your customers as they visit your online shop. Because before, when they could come in, you can talk to them, and they're spending time coming there. But when in a virtual environment, you have 14 to 30 seconds. All it is a click to get to you and a click to move on to somebody else. So you want to be able to capture those rich storytelling techniques and grab them in that first 14 to 30 seconds. You want to make sure that you stay on their minds and make sure that you have a social media presence. That is really our word of mouth in the virtual world. And the beauty of the social media is that it can remain on your post, it can remain on that timeline, and it can travel farther, just more than you just having a conversation with someone or they're telling about your product. So you want to make sure that you are really having that social media presence and use that social media presence to learn more about your customers. Because before they come in, you just know what they buy, but you can actually go to their pages and see different things that they buy. You can know their character. You get to be introduced to other customers or potential customers because they follow that person or like the same things as that person. You also want to be able to give them opportunities to provide feedback. Feedback is key because in the virtual environment, when we are purchasing, we are considering the opinions of others who have tried that. So providing an opportunity or an avenue for them to offer feedback is a way to remain relevant, as well as understanding the current demand. Your product or your service maybe have been great and still is great, but there might be a different demand now that we're in a virtual environment. So understanding what the current demand is and how your product or service is relevant to that current demand. The second are relationships, and that is, how do we build and improve our customer relations? You want to have repeat business. I tell the businesses that I work with all the time, what you want are the beehive customers. When I say beehive, everybody knows who Beyonce is. And her fans are called the beehive. Anything Beyonce says, anything she does, they're behind her 100%. They actually probably promote her brands and all of her work more than she actually does. And that's what you want to do. You want to have a relationship so great with your customers that they are constantly promoting your company, your business, your service. And you also want to be able to capitalize on that customer profile. Again, piggybacking off what I said before with the social media presence, how can you understand more about your customer? What else do they buy? If you sell them or provide them, if you sell a bagel, that person eats more than a bagel. Find out what else they use so that use or eat so that you can provide more. What I'm talking about is maximizing the customer service that you have. You can provide more to your customer than just what they purchase or just what they ask for services from you. And so be able to understand what new needs they have during this pandemic and have a forecast of what they will need afterwards so that you can be able to provide that product or service to them. And that's all in relationship, talking to them, interacting with them, and social media and the internet gives us that opportunity. And also you want to make sure that you are building that relationship, because with the virtual environment, it's more of a direct to customer relationship that's available. The middleman is eliminated. So you have that. So make sure that when folks are purchasing from you, that you are capturing all the data that you can so that you can be able to contact your customers, push out new products, push out new services to them. Also, think about collaborations. Building relationships with other businesses, whether they are in the same industry so that you can share resources during this time, or just doing a collaboration. For instance, there was a business, a small business collaboration that we worked with, and she was the business owner. She owned a shipping store. And so she's been out there working, getting folks to ship their products to their customers. But there was also a chef who sold natural products. So those two formed a relationship. So when someone came in to ship their items, right there, they can taste and they could purchase natural food products. And so what was happening was the natural food products business was capitalizing on the customers of the shipping company. They were sharing customers, and that's what you want to do. When you have new customers, it's great, but we all know it's a whole lot cheaper and a whole lot easier to get that repeat business, to keep the customers. The slang is it's cheaper to keep her. And so that's what you want to think about is with the customers, how you get repeat business, but also when you begin to get new customers, look for that connection, whether from your customers or from other business collaborations, that you will have that connection, that foundation to build a relationship. Also, you want to think about, for new customers, are there customers in your target market that you've never approached? Think about your secondary markets and your tertiary markets. Here, our building is downtown, and when the pandemic happened, we started getting calls from a local restaurant. They've never called us before. They just depended on folks working downtown, would visit their restaurant. But when that happened, people weren't really coming to their restaurant anymore because of COVID, but also because a lot of folks were working from home. Their strategy was they began to call buildings and departments and different businesses to introduce themselves and say, hey, we're here, we will deliver to your office, just let us know. And so that's another way that you can expand that opportunity, is really think about the customers that want your products, that use your products or services, but that you have never made that contact with. The third R is repurpose, and that is, can my product or service be used in another manner? So you want to think about the alternate uses. and alternate markets that you may have. So for instance, I worked with a consulting company and they did career development, but their target was adults. But during this pandemic, there's a lot of folks who, graduated college online or virtually, but who's helping them? There's a lot of folks that are transitioning to high school and that are looking for programs. So think about the alternate markets where you don't really have to change what you offer. You're just offering it to some markets that you've never thought about before. How can you change, or how can you repurpose what you offer to really seek those new opportunities that are available? As well as think about alternative uses for your products, and think about temporary products or services that you can provide. There's janitorial companies that started doing special COVID cleaning. So it didn't take much for them just to add additional products to their product line so that they can offer that service and keep their customers, retain and get new customers, but also they're offering the same service, they're using the same employees, they're just having a different avenue of how they are getting that opportunity and how they're providing services. And it's helping them to relaunch and to talk to other companies and say, hey, as you begin to reopen, we know we were cleaning the buildings, but we can also do COVID related so that we can make sure that your office is ready to accept your employees and your customers as they come in. And lastly, for repurpose, think about relaunching or how you can improve your products, your current products or services. Sometimes as you begin to really reach out to your customers, you forget that you've had products or services that maybe weren't used before. So how can you just kind of put a little spin on it and offer it again and relaunch it to them? And so those are some opportunities or some ways that you can seek new opportunities through your customer delivery. And I still don't know if you can see my slide, but I'm just going to read it. And what it was a customer profile. So as you begin to build your customer profile, know more about your customers, some key things you want to know is you want to know their buying power. You want to know how they like to shop and how they like to receive product information. Are they going to Facebook? Are they relying on reviews? Who are the influencers that make them purchase? What is that point of purchase? You want to know their attitude and what drives them to purchase your product or your service. Also, social responsibility is key at this point. So you want to know, how do your customers perceive social responsibility for businesses? What organizations, what causes or movements are they in tune to? Because you want to make sure that what you're doing is in line with what social responsibilities that are heavy to them. Also, where and how do they purchase? So do your customers normally, do they like Cash App? Do they like Zelle? So you want to really think about and make sure that however they purchase, what leads them to purchase, that you are able to provide that for them and be able to provide it and make it easy and convenient for them to purchase your product or your service. Also think about the role that technology plays in their purchasing decision. How many times do they utilize feedback, or what technology pieces are crucial to them or help them to make those purchases? And think about the media platforms that have the reach. Right now, Facebook and Twitter are the most used media platforms as far as social media is concerned, where radio, especially for minority businesses, is like at 92%. They still count on radio for them to make purchases and decide on what they're going to purchase. And lastly, what are their spending categories? When we're in a pandemic, as Dr. Ryan talked about, when we're in a session, think about what spending categories always prosper during those times. And you want to make sure that you are seeking the opportunities to offer your customer service and change your customer service so that you can grow and thrive during this pandemic. So that really concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, definitely feel free to contact me at portia.jackson@houstontx.gov. Definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Dr. Portia. I hope you did see the slides. I also managed to share too, so I'm not sure who was sharing, but I had them up. So I think folks got a chance to see them. Thank you so much. We're going to move on. Thanks for dropping the mic. Arthur, you're going to pick it back up?
Thank you very much. Great presentations. I'm really happy to sort of follow up on this because I think mine is a little bit more philosophical in terms of the approach to doing business and entrepreneurship, and those were really, really great and tactical in terms of like what to actually, what to do. So first of all, I want to thank Deborah, Tanisha, and everybody in the organizing committee for the opportunity. Warm greetings from Canada. Really happy to be able to partake. It's really about creating, an ecosystem of entrepreneurship and business and knowledge and resource sharing, and doing these things is really great for all of us, I think, and great to get that exposure. So, I think that topic is really, really relevant, and it's really at the core of what it is to be a successful entrepreneur or business person, right? How do you evolve? How do you how do you adapt and thrive during uncertainty? As they say, necessity is the mother of all invention, right? So all great innovation has happened because there was a great need or a crisis or, something that humanity was trying to solve. So I think I always like this. I'm generally an optimist, and I always try to start with a positive. So I think the good news is if you're an entrepreneur or business owner, you're already much more prepared than the average person in terms of dealing with crisis. That's part of your DNA. It's what you do on a daily basis. It becomes second nature. So, I think for us, even when the pandemic happened, so just to give you a little history, like I'm the CEO of the Accelerator. It's in Windsor, Ontario, right next to Detroit. We do a lot of collaboration with incubators and businesses in Detroit, and it's really great. And then, COVID happened and everything got shut down. So, and even though we're non-for-profit, we really operate as a lean startup. So the first 2 years there, I was the only staff. Right now, we only have 2.5 staff, and we basically try to maximize our resources. So we started in a little space in downtown with 6,500 square feet of space. And 2 years ago, we ended up purchasing a building that's 55,000 square feet. And now we've become really evolved into an entrepreneurial hub for the region over the last 9.5 years. So we have like a recording studio, we have a theater space, we have a food incubator, we have obviously the tech component, we have an arts incubator, but it's all these, bringing all these different people together and leveraging their knowledge, leveraging their resources that really creates that magic. And I think it's really important. Rita Ricks, I did a really awesome job in her keynote earlier on, talking about the power of connecting with the right people and leveraging those resources and utilizing others to sort of succeed. And also this conference is a great example of all of us coming together, working together, and sharing our knowledge and experience to help others succeed. So, how do you stay relevant during a crisis? So, for us, dealing with crisis was kind of second nature because we never really had core funding, so we just had to figure it out. When we purchased our building, we ended up raising 60 grand in 12 hours from investors, and we didn't even know anything about raising money, but the community really rallied, and we basically use our lessons that we've learned through to help our company. So the first thing we did when COVID hit was basically shut down all the operations to make sure that everybody was safe. And then the second thing was like, let's sit down and strategize. Sometimes when things like this happen, it's a great moment to self-reflect, slow everything down, and start evaluating. It's sometimes it's better to take a step back and take a look and then sort of blindly go into trying to solve a problem that you don't quite understand yet. So, I think there's two really important things that I would like everybody to sort of remember in terms of dealing with crisis. So first of all, it's the uncertainty that creates the big sort of problem, right? Creates huge stress. And because, there's a lot of things out of your control and you're trying to control them, but because you can't control them, it creates even more stress. So people have to learn that it's okay to be aware of everything that's happening, but you should really focus on the things that you have control over, because that gives you power and allows you to feel more in control, as opposed to worrying about all the things that you can't impact and letting them stress you out. I know it's hard, but it takes discipline. The second thing is, every crisis brings opportunity. There's always opportunity for those who are willing to pay attention and find out where there's a need and they can offer value. As Dr. PJ alluded, you can look at new clients now. You can revamp your service. There's so many things you can do. If you're just paying attention, you have a pulse on what's happening. And again, start with your community. Start with your existing clients. Start finding out what you can do for them specifically. What's their pain point? In our case, we couldn't impact how quickly the government would allow us to reopen. So we did little things like, take everything virtual. We started a book club. So since March, we went over 7 books. We started with The Alchemist, because I think that's a really great story and very fitting to entrepreneurs. But, we do pragmatic as well as, really sort of more spiritual books that help the overall philosophy of the entrepreneur. It also gave us a chance to work on things organizationally that we didn't have a chance to do before, because you're busy doing the day-to-day. So again, for every business owner, figure out, look at your processes, streamline things that you can streamline. Update your social media. It's huge. That was a great quote, by the way, Dr. PJ. The social media is your new word of mouth. So absolutely, right? You have a community there that follows you, that likes you, that's your beehive, that wants to share things about you. So make sure you put out the right messages and let them share the right content for you. And, what can you do in this downtime that can improve your, overall success going forward? And again, don't focus on the things that you can't impact, because they're just going to be frustrating and are going to make you feel powerless. So again, for us too, we also did a whole bunch of member options for new members. We also set up the space to be COVID ready for businesses to move in once we move to stage 2 and 3. So again, we focus really on doing things that were under our sort of power. So again, the best possible way, and it's always the case, but specifically during a crisis, to stay relevant is to offer value. Find out how you can offer value to your clients. Find out how you can offer value to your community. We have a great business in Windsor. These guys are called Men in Kilts, and they do gutter cleaners, right? What they did when COVID started, they delivered food to all the older people who couldn't leave their homes, to people who were disabled, things like that. It wasn't part of their business, but guess what? That went such a long way in terms of promoting their brand, of making them feel like they're part of the community. And now when people are cleaning their gutters, guess who they're going to call, right? It's going to be the Men in Kilts, because they did more than they had to. They gave to the community. And one of the things that we found with people and working with our clients, unfortunately, knock on wood, none of our businesses closed during this time. So we have about 40 businesses operating out of our space, and some virtually from other cities that we work with, and nobody closed down. But they want advice, mentorship, but more importantly, they just want somebody who genuinely cares and listens to them and gives them feedback during tough times, right? So our job was to be there and just be genuinely caring and supportive. And we had weekly meetings, virtual meetings with everyone, but if people needed one-on-one time, or even if they wanted to come in, we certainly made that available, obviously with safety and masks and all that. So, but talking about genuinely caring and creating relationships, I sort of want to use that as a segue for my doctoral research. So I'm looking specifically at social capital and how business incubators, particularly in business accelerators, create social capital for the companies that reside within. So by social capital, I'm talking about trust. How do we create trust between people? How do we create a common language where we're all talking about success together and realizing success as a unit, all of us succeeding together? The rising tide lifts all the boats. How do we convince people to share their network and to share their resources and knowledge with others so that we can all succeed together? So some really interesting data that came out of my research. I looked specifically at business incubators that were nonprofit and university business incubators. And they're both really good at creating social capital, but they sort of manifest differently. With nonprofit, it's more like information sharing, being there as a support system. As the university ones are more, you get access to grants, you get access to research facilities, things like that. But ultimately, what you want to be able to do is create a safe, trustworthy space where everybody can leverage the resources of everyone else there, right? Then we can all quickly move closer to our goals. And it becomes a much easier battle because, being a business owner and entrepreneur is really full contact sport. You have to be emotionally, psychologically, physically, mentally there. And sometimes when you have those tough times, like dealing with crisis, you just need somebody who understands where you're coming from and listens to you, is able to get you, it's like, hey, let's get through today. Let's go for coffee. We'll get through this minute, this hour, this day. Tomorrow, a client calls you, make a sale, you're back on, in good graces. In our case too, we're very much a community organization. On October 2nd, we're actually doing a big thank you to the entire community, our graduates, our volunteers, our mentors, our investors who helped us. We wouldn't be here without their help because we have no core funding. So we bought a $1.7 million building with $50,000 in debt. We ended up having teachers who did not know who we were drop off checks at our lawyers for the closing prices. And that was all built on, on social capital, on relationships. And just through COVID in the last 2 months, we raised another $70K from investors just to keep the operations going and also extend, rent free to our members so they survive and can get through this really tough period. But I think the good positive thing is, like, if you can make it through a crisis and you realize that not only are you getting through it, but you're building more resiliency, you're building these networks. When the crisis is over, you're in the best position to succeed. Like, all of us who are going through this and surviving and we're going to thrive once this is all over because we're going to be mentally better prepared. Our systems will be better. Everything we've done will propel us towards a greater success. One of the things now I want to kind of switch it to, what is the marketing opportunity? And us being in Canada, I think, especially on the border, creates a really unique opportunity for collaboration. So we want to de facto become the launching pad for Canadian startups that want to do business in the United States. But likewise, we want to become the landing pad and have been the landing pad for many US companies that wanted to enter the Canadian market. So for example, DoorDash came and used us for 6 months to set up their Canadian office in Windsor. Smile Direct Club used us for, I think, a year. They set up their office at the Accelerator until they found their own place. But we have a great deal of, especially for tech companies, access to R&D, employment funding, all kinds of credits that wouldn't otherwise be available to US companies. But if you move to Canada, automatically you establish a Canadian office, you have access to those assets. So a VC from Chicago just recently told me that Canada has 4-to-1 runway for tech companies in terms of startup funding, which is a massive advantage, especially at the early stage. So I want to sort of open it to those individuals who, and businesses that are part of this or are going to watch this video. If you are interested in doing business in Canada, there's a great opportunity there. Again, to Dr. PJ's earlier point, you may not have looked at that market because you never needed it before, but now all of a sudden, even from Cincinnati to Windsor is 4 hours, right? Within 8-hour radius of Windsor, Detroit, you have, I think, a third, 70 million, a third of the entire North American population at your disposal. So it's a huge, huge market. And the Canadian one is something that a lot of American companies don't look at, but there's also the benefits of having free healthcare as well as the exchange rate, right? So there's a lot of opportunity there that I think maybe hasn't been explored in the past, but now with COVID and the reshifting of, what do we need to do to succeed, this is something that people should explore. So we really, in our case, we want to be of value to our members, to our community, but also to Canadian startups, as well as our American friends and collaborators, because, it's all about creating value and opportunity, right? The more we work together, the more genuine the collaboration is, the more opportunities everyone gets out of the process, right? And, we, in our case, we really want everybody to succeed together. We're really grassroots, and I think forget gated neighborhoods. Like, you don't need gates. If everybody's got what they need, then there's no need to worry, right? So let's just create more wealth for everyone and empower everyone to sort of get to their vision and purpose and whatever they want to achieve. Our sort of motto for the Accelerators, the best way to predict, we stole it from Peter Drucker, but the best way to predict the future is to create it. And we just want to empower people to do that. Even the way our logo is set up, the Accelerator, it's really a framework. We provide the canvas, but the businesses are the artists. They're the ones who are writing the story. We're just there to support them. And, basically, what I'd like to leave everybody with is like, through, especially as we navigate continuous challenging times, and I think Ryan referred to it before, we're probably heading to a recession. Things are not going to get easier necessarily. They may get more difficult. But stay focused on your vision and your purpose. It's really huge. Work on the things that you can impact and you can create positive outcomes from, and ignore the things that you can't impact because they'll just drive you crazy. Put 100% in everything that you do, and add as much value as possible, whether it's a handshake, interaction, a conversation, whatever it is. And then finally, connect with like-minded people and create social capital. Working together makes it so much easier. And with that, I thank you very much for the opportunity, and thank you to my colleagues and panelists here. Really, really great information, and a pleasure to be with all of you. Thank you.
Okay, that was great. Definitely some gems in there. I appreciate all that you had to offer. I've seen the chat kind of going off here with what they've heard so far. So really excited. Thank you so much for sharing. Anthony, you are our final speaker, so take it away.
So I'm trying to share my screen. Can you see it?
Something just popped up, a screen share. So I guess if you present it, we'll be able to see it pretty well.
Can you see that, Tanisha?
Yep.
All right, everybody. So thank you all for joining. I appreciate Deborah, Tanisha, and all the hard work that everyone has put into it. My name is Anthony Mcintosh. Unlike Dr. Ryan and Dr. PJ, as well as Arthur, who's pursuing his doctorate, I am not a doctor. So I wanted to take some time to have a conversation with you all, because we're really now having a conversation about positioning for the future. Tanisha mentioned it in the beginning, and she talked about rethinking the way you do business. And that's really my conversation. I mean, you've heard Dr. Ryan talk about strategy. You've heard Dr. PJ talk about relevance and value. You've heard Arthur talk about evolving and adapting and opportunity. All those things come together when you think about how do you rethink your business. So let's jump into this, right? So first thing, the struggle. Arthur talked about it. Everyone has been talking about it. And the struggle is really the uncertainty and disruption. This is happening today, but as Dr. Ryan mentioned, there's more uncertainty and disruption coming, right? So don't just think about this as a COVID struggle. Think about this as this is the way businesses have operated in the past, and you will continue to operate moving forward. So when I talk about the struggle, I want you to think about it from a point of disruption. And what does that actually mean to your business? Because as I talk a little bit further later down the road, you're going to sort of help create some frameworks around how do you think about disruption and really putting it into your business, right? The other thing is now the challenge, right? And this is what we all have been facing, right? So if the struggle is disruption, you may be sitting there going, so, okay, if that's not the challenge, what's the challenge? And the challenge is finding the balance between survivability and moving forward. And when you start thinking about crisis management and you start thinking about where we are, you start thinking about crisis management, and we all get into this reactionary mode, right? We all start thinking about the numbers. We all start thinking about this short-term reacting. So that is the challenge, right? The challenge is not just about how you survive in this short period of time of reacting, but how do you start creating that balance between that short term as well as thinking about moving forward. Now, the reason it is a challenge because all these short-term issues that are in front of us seem insurmountable, right? So there is so much there, you feel like you're eating the entire elephant, as well as there is just so much pressure to perform that we all are just, some people, and I've worked with some of my clients, they just feel stuck, right? There's so much to do that they don't even know where to start, right? So this is where I start talking about the challenge, right? The challenge of finding that balance between crisis management, survivability, and just reacting to what's in front of you, to beginning to think about how do you move the business forward, right? And when you start thinking about moving the business forward, right, this is what I call the path, right? So the path is going to really focus on, we're reacting, we put things in place to sort of stopgap, help us survive where we are. But now we need to start thinking about the path, and what does that path look like moving forward, right? And when I talk about the path, I want you to think about three things that we'll talk about. The first one is sustainable success. And I'll talk about each of these individually, but I want you to start thinking about, what does sustainable success look like and what does it mean for your business? The second piece that I want to talk about is assessing your business, right? Everyone is going through and trying to find opportunities here and there. But the thing that I'm going to take a step back and say, look, let's take a step back, and I want you to rethink even how you assess your business moving forward. And then the final piece is your strategy and plan. I mean, you've heard everyone talk about a strategy and having strategies here and there, but I just want to sort of, as we go through this, just give you a little bit of a few nuggets to talk about. What does it actually look like to have a strategy and a plan, right? So let's get into this. So we heard Dr. PJ talk about relevance, right? And we heard Arthur talk about value, right? So a couple of things I want you to think about initially when I talk about sustainable success, right? I want you to think about two things. One is remaining relevant, and the other is evolving, right? Arthur talked about evolving. Everyone, you've heard Dr. PJ talking about relevance, but I want you to think about sustainable success is not just about metrics. It is not just about growth. It is about your ability to remain relevant and evolve. And when I talk about relevance, right, I want you to think about two things. And you've heard this in different forms earlier, but I want you to think about what makes you unique and what people actually care about. Because the overlap of those two things is really what makes you relevant, right? And what makes you relevant is the value that you find when you have something unique that people actually care about. And your ability to get those circles overlapping is really your ability to create more relevance in terms of how you stay important or how you stay in front of the people and what they are trying to find. Now, the ability to evolve is the ability to remain relevant over time. So as you think about some of the things that have been said, during crises or during these types of uncertainty, you may find a need to pivot to a different customer segment, right? Because what makes you unique may be actually something that now pops with a different group of people, right? So that relevance will always be there, and your ability to evolve is going to really help you not only focus on today, but how do you move forward for tomorrow? Now, I talk about these things, but I also want you to think about, something that I've created, and it's a framework that I put together, and it's called Sustainable Success Value Continuum, right? So as you think about sustainable success, there are three buckets that I want you to think about. I want you to think about your ability to create value, right? So that ability to create value is about that ability to be relevant. I want you to think about connecting that value, right? So Dr. PJ talked about social media. She talked about customer service. She talked about relationships. Those are things that are important in terms of your ability to connect value. And the last piece is your ability to capture value, right? So it's great to have great value and to connect it, but if you don't have the metrics in place to capture your value, such as revenue, profitability, it doesn't all come together. And these three things always need to be working in harmony, right? So think about it: create value, connect value, and capture value, right? So that's the framework I'm going to use moving forward, just to get you to start thinking about things a little differently as you start thinking about what's your path moving forward. So remember I said assessing your business, right? So I want you all to take a moment and I want you to just think about, okay, my business and my business moving forward, and what does it mean to assess my business differently? So the first question that I would ask you to think about when you think about your business is two things. One, what is it that you actually do versus what business are you actually in, right? Because what you do and the business you're actually in may not be the same thing. And you need to understand the difference between those two. For an example, what I do is I provide consulting and advisory services to my clients. The business that I am in is helping my clients build sustainable success, right? Those two differences and nuances will help you think about your business moving forward, right? Because the business that you're in is really around the value that you are creating, right? Not necessarily what you do, because what you do is what a lot of other people are doing, and not that many people is going to care that much about what you do. The business that you in is the value that you are providing to people, and that's what they're really going to focus on. And that value is the value that I want you to think about when you're thinking about being relevant, when you're thinking about connecting, and when you're thinking about how to capture. The other thing that I want you to think about is everyone is talking about disruption. Everyone's talking about uncertainty. Everyone is now into, okay, how do I grow my business? How do I put all of these pieces together? And they're looking at this disruption from a results perspective. I am going to tell you, stop looking at the results. Look at what was actually disrupted, right? So if you think about the framework, you think about the create, connect, and capture, think about what was actually disrupted, and to Arthur's point, what can you control, right? So you may not be able to control the results, because when a restaurant cannot serve any clients because of COVID, that's something that they can't control because they've been asked to shut down. However, if you think about what was actually disrupted, and you start thinking about where the value is, and you start thinking about what's relevant to your clients or no customers, now you start getting into a point of, okay, so now how am I really thinking about my business, and how am I assessing my business moving forward? So just a couple of things that get you to start thinking about looking at your business differently. And I always say, looking at your business through a different lens. You know, there's one thing that going into 2020, a lot of people sort of use the metaphor that 2020 was this, perfect vision, right? The year of perfect vision, right? Everything changed in March. And what happens when your vision starts declining? You either start wearing contacts or you put on glasses, right? You're changing the lens in terms of how you see things. I'm telling you now, change the lens. The other thing that I just want to say, that as you think about, creating value, as you think about connecting value, you think about capturing value, you need to have a strategy and a plan. Those are two different things, right? The strategy is really looking at how you're going to achieve the goals that you put out there. And just a couple of questions, you don't have to get, strategy should not be that complicated, right? Just to give you a couple of questions that you should be thinking about as you think about your strategy, right? One is, what is your goal? What is your aspiration, right? What it is you're trying to accomplish. The other is, who's your target audience? I think Dr. PJ, Dr. Ryan, everyone talked about your audience and making sure you understand your customer profile. Make sure you understand who your target audience is. The other one is really, what's the value that you're bringing to the table? How will you win, right? It's all about value, and creating value is the name of the game. It's the name of the game before uncertainty, it's the name of the game during uncertainty, and it's definitely going to be the name of the game after uncertainty passes. And then you start thinking about, based upon what you're trying to accomplish, the audience you're going after, what are the capabilities and systems you need to put in place, right? Those are just some of the fundamental questions that you need to answer when you talk about strategy. And I say the strategy and plans are different because that strategy is getting into how you're going to achieve something. The plan is really where the details come into play, right? This is where you start making that strategy actionable, right? This is where you start people seeing initiatives, lining up against budgets, but this is where you make the strategy actionable. And I separate those two because you don't want to, as I tell people, you don't want to lose your strategy when you get into a planning mode. Right now, we talk about uncertainty and disruption, and I talk about the strategy and the plan. And I've given you those questions to sort of think through. But the thing that I want you to remember as it relates to the strategy and plan is making sure that you are thinking through and building in flexibility and adaptability when you start thinking about your strategy and plan moving forward, right? Because those are going to be the things that help you through uncertainty. Those are going to be the things that allow you to pivot or reinvent or innovate. That flexibility and adaptability is what you need to always keep in mind. So in closing, a couple things. Sustainable to success. Remember, remain relevant and evolve. Assessing your business. Change your lens. Start looking at your business differently. Stop looking at it from a standpoint of what you do and look at it as from a point of what business are you actually in. And finally, put together a strategy and plan that works for you moving forward, right? It's not necessarily about thinking what you did in the past, because that's probably no longer going to be valid moving forward. But think about it from a standpoint of how do I move forward and how do I put flexibility and adaptability in my plan. So I will now turn this back over.
Awesome.
To everybody. Did that work?
No.
Hey,
that works. That works so good. Thank you so much, Anthony. I love that. When your vision change, you need to put on some contacts or some glasses. Change the lenses. I love that. That is definitely a word for the season. I want to thank you all for your presentations today. I hope that the folks online got some gems, some nuggets pulled out of there. I sure did. I heard words like trust, share, adapt, care. Care came up a lot. You guys all mentioned the need for business owners to kind of know what their customers care about, and mentioned the word values. Now, Anthony, you had alluded to this earlier. You mentioned it, that it's not always just about the bottom line. And so I want to ask this question to you all before I turn over to the chat. As we're in this era, COVID-19, we're in the racial tensions, and crisis is going to continue. We know that. How do business owners, how do we make sure that they're communicating to their customer base about what their values are and what's important to them? And how does that tie into staying relevant in marketing when they might not see it as a value? Specifically, how do they engage on socio-political platforms in this time and moving forward?
I can start off, I guess. Yeah, so there's recent work on this coming out, new issues in the Journal of Marketing. One of them is actually a close co-author of mine. And what they find is that for businesses that are corporately held, when they engage in sociopolitical stances, actually the stock value does show a negative shock, right? So, and the reason for that is because shareholders believe that when businesses focus away from profit motives, that can be detrimental to business. However, the reason for this, if you really kind of delve into some of the stuff, is that they're afraid that there's a balance, right, between like boycott and revenue lift, right? So if you look at, for example, what Nike did with Colin Kaepernick, there was an immediate shock down because investors weren't sure about that, right? If it could be lead to a boycott, or there's this uncertainty in the market. But then you saw revenue growth in December, 3 months after it came through. So then the stock market went up. Stock price went up for Nike. So really it's about assessing where your market's at with respect to how much they're going to enhance your brand for taking that stance versus the negative boycott down. Just to share a little bit. So we're, my nonprofit that we're starting up right now is involved with enhancing that lift, right? So we're trying to accumulate the information from businesses about what their political stances are and their platforms with respect to things like sustainability, things like racial causes, and amplifying that voice to progressive consumers, right? Through platforms like an app and a website and so forth. And then really recruiting progressive customers to enhance those brands and really, supporting those brands through purchase. So the more that we can enhance those things, the better it is, right? So.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. Anyone else care to chime in on that?
If I could just, one point, I think specifically for like smaller businesses, medium-sized businesses, it's, I think the best way to connect and stay is be genuine, right? People want a genuine story. They want to and they want to see who you are, right? People are curious. Especially if it's local, if I'm going to shop from you, I want to know what you believe in. This, it's been a crazy exercise in terms of finding out who your real friends are, where you stand with certain people, what their political. So as horrible and tragic as some of the stuff is, in a way, we're starting to see who do we really want to do business with long term. And I think being genuine and standing up for what you believe in is really going to have long-term benefits, just like Ryan mentioned with Nike. In the long term, it's really going to benefit them because they took a stand and people are going to side with that. And especially for small businesses, being genuine and sticking to what you have is crucial, I think. We have a startup at the Accelerator Cookup. It's a food incubator, and they work with minorities, specifically women immigrants who are coming to Canada who want to use the food industry as a platform to create a business. So they do pop-up shops for them. They help them with their planning if they want to open a restaurant, things like that. And it came from a genuine desire for them to do that. And it's incredible to see how they've basically empowered a whole group of people to actually now consider that as a viable potential option for a career. They can actually use cooking as a platform for them to gain wealth, to do something that they love, give to the community. And food is such an amazing thing that brings people together, right? So, but it's, again, it all came through their genuine desire to help that audience because they connect with that audience. So it's really a nice story. So
yeah, love that.
Yeah, so I would just add to that, a couple of things. One is authentic, be authentic, right? To Arthur's point, be authentic. Know your customers. Dr. PJ talked about profiles. Know your customers. And the third thing that ties with Dr. PJ is know how to reach your customers. You can't reach them all on the same platform, right? So if you're going for a different audience, make sure you're reaching that audience and people are getting your message, right? So that's all I would add.
Thank you. Dr. PJ, do you have anything to add?
I agree with all of them. I think they said it, articulated it perfectly. I would just add too, especially for small business owners, sometimes you want to try to jump on each trend or what's currently going. And again, be authentic to what you're doing. I just want to echo that. But also, when you know your customers, you need to be in tune of what issues affect them. And don't turn your back to the issues that affect them when you know that is your customer. So then you have to do a lot of damage control, kind of like the NFL had to do. So I think, not to get into all of that, but just really be mindful of the issues that affect your customers and affect your employees, and take a proactive stance there.
Great. Thank you guys so much. I'm going to move here to the chat. I did see a few questions come in. First of all, we have lots of awesome commentary. We have a question, and if there's one for my tech folks that I missed up ahead. The first one I'm seeing is from Colin McKillop. He says, as companies address the business impacts resulting from COVID-19 and the economic challenge of paying rent and surviving, your local business accelerators, incubators, and co-working spaces may be a lower cost option for your business as your lease expires. Right sizing might be an option not only for SMEs, but also larger organizations and may need to find temporary space to house employees in a safe 6-foot social distancing environment for 6 or 12 months. Okay, that's a comment. My apologies. A question from Kari Hicks. Thank you, Colin. A question from Kari Hicks for Dr. Rahanel. Could you provide insight on some ways that small businesses can perform meaningful market research on a small budget?
Yeah, so I do a lot of research for both my job as a professor as well for our nonprofit startup. There's a few platforms that I use. One of them is from Amazon called Amazon Mechanical Turk. That has a nationwide sample. I've probably drawn tens of thousands of samples from that group of consumers in the last 10 years. The other one I would suggest is Prolific. Prolific is a company that has panels of consumers who do micro tasks. Prolific's really great for ones where you want to do international samples, I would say. And these participants cost anywhere between 60 cents to $1 per minute. So it can be really cost effective to do it that way. The other thing I would say for controlling costs is if you're trying, it really depends on what you're trying to do with your research. So if you're trying to just get a point estimate for how much someone likes this product or how much people like this new feature, you just want a random sample. Really? I mean, people won't tell you this in classes, but mean stabilized at 30 people. So you don't need 2,000 people in a study. Once you start to get 30, those means really don't move around a lot, right? So you don't have to spend a lot on a lot of people. It can just be a few people. So
thank you. Anyone have anything to add to that? No? Okay. I do see, Deborah, you said that there's a question from Miss Hicks. Oh, yep, we got to that one. Okay, perfect. Okay, and then a question from Jewel Washington. The current climate has mandated change, and risk does not always beget reward. How can businesses position themselves to maintain integrity to their mission and purpose while navigating unforeseen shifts?
So, I think change is the only constant, and we really need people to sort of, especially if you want to be successful in business long term, and companies that have, been successful for long periods of time, like let's say Ford or IBM. People don't think of IBM as a great company in terms of necessarily from a consumer standpoint and R&D and whatever, but IBM has filed for more patents and received more patents than any company in the world over the last 30 years, every year. And it's because they're able to evolve and adapt to change. So I think, it's really understanding who you are as a business, what's your vision, what's your purpose. And once you decide that, it's just basically navigating uncertainty. It's just part of the game. You just have to stay focused and, the right people, the right partnerships, the right collaboration will come your way, because if you're genuine and you're doing the things that you need to do, there's many times with crisis when we're we just don't know what to do. And I try to tell the team, I'm like, you know what? All we're going to do is the things that we can focus on right now. The rest, the universe will take care of that. If we do our part, the universe will do its part and things will work out okay. And strangely enough, it always has. So I think there has to be that belief that if you're doing the right things every day and you're showing up and you're doing it with a positive attitude, you will reap the reward. Tom Boyle for Impact Theory always says, that the struggle is guaranteed, the success isn't. And that's the hard part, because, we show up every day, but you just have to believe in your heart that eventually you're going to be successful if you're doing it for the right reasons, and just keep going. And eventually it does happen.
Yeah, So Tanisha, I'm going to get back to the point on this because I've seen this with some of the small businesses that I work with, right? And this is why I say understanding the question between the difference of what you do versus what business are you actually in, right? If you define yourself by what you do, your ability to evolve is going to be limited, right? So like I said, what I do as consultant is that if that's how I define myself, my opportunities are going to be very limited when things change. Now, if you really focus on the business that you're in, that's going to be the value that you're delivering, right? So Arthur talked about IBM, right? IBM didn't really, what they did was they provided technology, right? But their real value was creating those patents that allowed them to deliver whatever type of technology that they had in store, right? So for me, the business that I am in is all about building sustainable success for clients. I can do that through consulting. I can do that through workshop. I can do that through multiple platforms. So no matter what changes or uncertainty comes, I am staying true to the value versus being stuck with what I actually do, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that as you think about that question, think about it, because missions are important, but missions tie you more to what you actually do than the business that you're in. So I would always say, just think about the business that you're in, because that is the true value, and that will always provide you with broader opportunities.
Yeah, I'll just piggyback on something Arthur's said a few times now. Control what you can control, which is a lot of people don't realize when you deal with uncertainty, and uncertainty is different from risk, right? Risk is, I know the factors, there are two outcomes, I take the risk, right? Or I don't take the risk. Uncertainty is lots of factors, unknown outcomes, and we're not sure what's going to happen, okay? In those situations, you cannot actually think about it. What we have for those situations is kind of our unconscious mind, right? So when people say sleep on it, that's what they're saying, is your unconscious mind will deliberate without attention, and it will actually bring you to optimal answers. There's been work going on in that line of research for about 15 years now, and that stuff is super robust and super stable. The other thing I would say about Anthony's point about what business you're in is really reframing kind of what you want to do with your business. So a really common example here I use is Starbucks, right? When I ask my students, like, okay, who is their competition? They'll always say like different coffee shops. And I always tell them that is their competition. Their competition is also their library. Their competition is also their workspace, the gym. Because what Starbucks wants to do is be that third place. That third place you spend outside of your home and outside of your office or school, right? And so thinking about your competition that way really allows you to see the opportunities when things like recession happen or other hard financial times.
Really good. Really, really good. Thank you, guys. Dr. PJ, I always want to make sure if you want to say anything, feel free to jump in. Okay.
They covered it.
They covered it. Another question, how do you know an opportunity is indeed an opportunity?
I think you know it's an opportunity if it can benefit you, and then if you have the capacity to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just to kind of add to that, I think recessions are a great opportunity. You think about, one thing I always advocate for is, if you look at the data, right, companies consistently underspend on advertising and R&D during recessions compared to the optimal, right? But if you think about it, that's the best time to spend on that stuff. You can negotiate better contracts for R&D, and you have lower cost share of voice for advertising, right? So if you look at, let's say, the last recession, 2008, Airbnb, Groupon, Uber, all formed during the Great Recession. Disney was formed in the Great Depression. Burger King was formed right after the Korean War, right, when we had all these downturns in the economy. And it's because you have all these structural advantages during recession. So I actually think recessions are a great opportunity as long as you're prepared for it.
Just to echo that, we've had more interest in virtual memberships and people signing up over the last 2 months than in the basically previous year. Windsor is very much an automotive manufacturing town, so 4 generations. So to change the culture and say, hey, from hourly work to being an entrepreneur is a very hard shift. But because of COVID and how it basically changed everything, and people realize that we're not safe anywhere, and I might as well, take my destiny in my own hands. I think it's really helped shift that mindset, and now they look at it as an opportunity as opposed to necessarily a huge threat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I would add that if you're thinking about opportunity, I want you to think about a couple of things, right? One, there are opportunities that are made available from the market perspective, and that opportunity is an opportunity for you if you can easily access it, right? So like Dr. PJ talked about, right? So when you think about opportunities, think about market availability as well as your ability to access that. So
Thank you all. Another question from Shield. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. Shitao Bajoria. Thank you. If a young entrepreneur has a product idea but very few resources, how does one go about it? Product development, patent? Do we reach out to big manufacturers in the relevant industry? Who's taking it?
Okay. I think that's a little bit more up my alley, but depends on the product, right? I wouldn't necessarily go to patent right away because it can be very expensive and time consuming. So, you might want to flush it out. And again, going to a large company at the early stage, they may not take you too seriously unless you do have a patent, certain other things, the prototype, at least the minimum viable product. So ideally, again, you probably have an incubator, accelerator, some sort of resource center, small business center in your region that you can tap into. That's the best place to meet up with some experts, meet up with people in that industry and pick their brain and see if you have something that they find of value. So for example, we have people who are working in mobility and automotive here. So we always connect them with people in industry to say, okay, well, this, at least as an idea, as a concept, does this have legs? Because, ideally you don't spend too much time and resources developing something that is not going to have potential positive outcome. So you're going to find out quick, kill it quick, or pivot it quick.
I speak to the having limited resources. Like Arthur did mention, tap into the free services that are available to you. Like our office offers free services and we connect. So look at your city government to see what is available. I believe SCORE is probably almost in every city. Those folks have done it all. Look for mentorship. Also, business plan competitions are a great way to get mentorship. It's also a great way to showcase your idea and garner attention from your idea. And it's most of the time, I've never known of a business plan competition to have a cost to it. So look for those and enter that, because then also when you're entering that competition, normally there's a financial prize at the end, a monetary prize at the end, and that will also help you to gain resources. And then if you're looking for funding, I would suggest looking into angel investors as well, if that's an option you want to go with.
Awesome. Okay, thank you.
Or the 3 F's, friends, family, and fools. Say
that last one again, Arthur. Friends, family, and fools, he said?
Yeah.
Love it. Okay, we have a few minutes left, so I want to try to get to these last questions. We have one from Jill. I have a small dumpster business, and currently we are okay. I worry about the potential of a recession. And like Dr. Rahanel stated, our customers may no longer see this as an essential, but more of a treat. What advice do you have for me to prepare for an even more downside with a potential recession? Other opportunities for a dumpster business?
I don't know much about the dumpster business, but I would say that there are ways that you can counter the different perceptions of your business itself. I think moving from treat to essential and countering that, the ways to do that really are through emphasizing the financial risk of perceiving it that way. So telling consumers like there are financial consequences of not using our service right now. I'm not sure if it's a B2B business, B2C, but just really emphasizing those aspects of it.
So in our case, I noticed a lot of people are doing renos and all kinds of jobs now because they were off from work, certain things. So maybe even positioning it in terms of removal of waste and other things that could be more practical for like, your general public, and offering that service during this time, because a lot of people don't have a truck or something like that to take away their waste.
Mm-hmm.
I would say consider, and it also depends on where you're located, because if you're somewhere near the ocean, there should be plenty of opportunities for you with the dumpster business, with all the tropical storms and hurricanes and devastations that happen with tornadoes. So look at your environment in ways that you can take advantage, because a lot of businesses do grow during disasters, and a dumpster business would definitely be one that would during a disaster.
Great advice. Thank you all. I think that might be the last question. Nope, one more from the chat. Okay, what do incubators and accelerators offer? Arthur?
Yeah. Depends. There's all kinds of. I spent the last 8 years working on my dissertation, so it depends on the business incubator. Most of them offer space services such as consulting, mentorship, access to professional services. So, for example, let's say we have a U.S. company wants to move to Canada. We can connect them with lawyers who can help them with immigration. We can help them with lawyers to set up their Canadian corp. We can help them. Get a Canadian accountant, things like that. We also, the way we've built our ecosystem is that everybody who works as part of the accelerator who's a member offers discounted rates to everybody. So for example, if, we have marketing companies, SEO companies, you name it. So by just jumping into that ecosystem, all of a sudden you have all the required services that you may not be able to do. And I think this has been mentioned by all the speakers before, but focus on the things that, you're an expert in, and hire other people to do the other things, because if you're not an accountant, you shouldn't be doing your books. If you're a great salesperson, or you're the CEO who has the vision for the company, go out there and sell your product, do the high-end value things that you can accomplish, and hire people to do the other things. So, and the other thing is, I think from a psychological perspective, you have that safety net, you have that, resources and people around you that can guide you through the tough times and empathize, because they really understand what you're going through, because they at one point have gone through the same, ups and downs and with business. So, but again, it depends on the incubator and their offering.
Thank you. Well, thank you all. We are right at our 9:55 marker. Well, for me, I'm in Chicago. But I want to thank you, Dr. Ryan, Dr. PJ, Arthur, Anthony. Great gems today. A great session. I know that some of you had slides. I believe those will be made available to participants of this session. Correct me if I'm wrong, Deb, but I believe that those will be going out. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of this conference, and hope to connect with you all soon. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Tanisha.
Thanks, Tanisha. It was a pleasure serving with all of you guys.
Same here, Dr. PJ.
Same here. I'm just going to stick around for a little bit. All right. Take care.
All righty.